Good evening and welcome to Crossfire Perspectives, our weekly program dedicated to dissecting contentious societal issues. Tonight, we delve into a question that sparks considerable debate. Should the legal drinking age be lowered to 18? It's a topic that balances arguments of adult responsibility against concerns for public health and safety, making it a particularly complex issue. Joining us to explore this are Sarah, a university student who advocates for lowering the age, and Dr. Ben Carter, a public health expert who will argue against such a change. We'll begin with opening statements from each of our guests, followed by rebuttals, a moderated discussion, and finally, closing remarks. Sarah, you have the floor.
Thank you, Alex. The core of my argument is straightforward. If an individual is deemed mature enough to vote, to enter into contracts, to serve in the military and risk their life for their country, they should also be considered mature enough to decide whether to consume alcohol. The current discrepancy, where 18-year-olds bear the full responsibilities of adulthood without all its privileges, is fundamentally inconsistent and, frankly, unjust. We often hear the phrase, old enough to fight, old enough to drink, and while it's a simplification, it captures a very real sense of this imbalance. Furthermore, lowering the drinking age to 18 could foster a more responsible drinking culture. When alcohol consumption is driven into secretive, unsupervised settings like illicit house parties or clandestine gatherings, the risks of binge drinking and negative consequences actually increase. Bringing it into regulated environments like pubs and restaurants, where there's oversight, allows young adults to learn to drink moderately and sociably. Many developed nations, including the majority of European countries, have a legal drinking age of 18 or even lower, and they don't exhibit the catastrophic public health crises that opponents often predict. Their experiences demonstrate that a lower drinking age can coexist with responsible consumption patterns. A lower age could also diminish the, quote, forbidden fruit allure that often surrounds alcohol for young people, shifting the focus from clandestine consumption to education about responsible drinking, which should be our ultimate goal.
Thank you. While I acknowledge Sarah's points regarding legal consistency, my primary concern, grounded in extensive public health research, is the significant risk that lowering the drinking age to 18 would introduce. Firstly, and crucially, the human brain continues to undergo critical development well into the early 20s. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and reasoning, is among the last areas to mature. Introducing alcohol during this sensitive developmental period can have long-lasting detrimental effects on brain structure and function, potentially leading to cognitive impairments and an increased vulnerability to alcohol dependence later in life. Secondly, a lower drinking age is strongly correlated with an increase in alcohol-related harms. We can anticipate rises in alcohol-impaired driving incidents, alcohol poisoning cases, alcohol-fueled violence, and other risky behaviors that endanger not only the young drinkers, but the wider community. The data from jurisdictions that have experimented with lower drinking ages often point to these negative outcomes, which are then reversed when the age is raised again. Thirdly, there's the undeniable trickle-down effect. If 18-year-olds can legally purchase alcohol, it inevitably becomes more accessible to younger individuals, such as 16 and 17-year-olds, often through social networks and older siblings or friends. Maintaining the current age of 21 serves as a significant barrier to this underage access. Indeed, evidence suggests that higher drinking ages have contributed to positive public health outcomes, including reductions in youth drinking and related problems in regions where they are enforced.
Dr. Carter raises valid points about brain development, but it's important to contextualize this. At 18, society already entrusts individuals with decisions that have profound and lasting consequences, such as choosing a career path, managing finances, or, as mentioned, participating in democratic processes and national defense. Instead of outright prohibition based on ongoing brain maturation, which is a gradual process, The focus should be on comprehensive alcohol education, teaching young adults about responsible consumption and the risks of misuse, regardless of the specific legal age. Regarding the concern about increased harms, the current system doesn't eliminate these harms. It arguably exacerbates some by driving drinking into uncontrolled environments. If 18 to 20-year-olds could drink in supervised settings, like restaurants or university-sanctioned events, we might actually see a reduction in dangerous binge drinking. This isn't about encouraging recklessness. It's about acknowledging their adult status and guiding them towards safer practices. The principle of legal adulthood and consistency across rights remains a cornerstone of a fair and rational legal system.
Sarah's emphasis on rights is understandable, but we must also consider the state's fundamental responsibility to protect public health and safety. Sometimes, this necessitates regulations that may appear to limit certain individual liberties, especially when there's a clear potential for widespread, preventable harm. The right to consume alcohol is not absolute when weighed against the potential for increased traffic fatalities, alcohol-related assaults, and the long-term health burdens associated with early alcohol use. The idea that moving drinking into supervised environments will universally lead to responsible behavior is, I believe, overly optimistic. While it might help in some instances, it doesn't negate the increased overall consumption and the associated population-level risks that a lower drinking age would likely bring. We cannot ignore the specific physiological and neurological vulnerabilities of the 18 to 20-year-old demographic. The scientific evidence regarding alcohol's impact on the still developing brain and its correlation with risky behaviors in this age group is substantial and compelling, and it supports a more cautious approach.
Thank you both for those insightful rebuttals. Let's delve a bit deeper. Sarah, Dr. Carter mentioned the, quote, trickle-down effect. How would your proposal specifically address concerns about increased alcohol access for those younger than 18 who might obtain it from newly legal 18-year-old peers? And Dr. Carter, given that 18-year-olds can vote, serve in the military, and enter contracts, how do you justify restricting their access to alcohol when many other developed nations with similar adult responsibilities do not impose such a restriction?
That's a legitimate concern, Alex. Addressing the trickle-down effect would require a multifaceted approach. Firstly, robust enforcement of ID verification at all points of sale would be critical, with significant penalties for establishments that serve minors or for adults who illegally supply alcohol to those underage. Secondly, we would need to intensify educational campaigns aimed not just at the 18 to 20 age group about responsible drinking, but also at younger teenagers about the risks of underage alcohol consumption and the laws against it. Ultimately, treating 18-year-olds as the adults they are in other legal aspects, and trusting them with this responsibility, coupled with strong education and regulation, is more effective than a blanket prohibition that is widely flouted anyway.
Alex, the comparison to rights like voting or military service, while frequently made, overlooks the unique public health implications associated with alcohol. Alcohol is not an ordinary commodity. It's a psychoactive substance with significant potential for harm to both the individual and society. Different rights and responsibilities carry different types and levels of societal risk, and policy must reflect that. The decision to allow an 18-year-old to vote does not directly correlate with the same public health outcomes as allowing them to purchase alcohol. While enforcement efforts are important, the reality is that increased legal access for 18-year-olds who frequently socialize with slightly younger peers in high school and early university settings will inevitably lead to greater availability for minors, despite our best intentions with ID checks and penalties.
In conclusion, lowering the legal drinking age to 18 is not about promoting drinking. It's about promoting consistency, responsibility, and acknowledging the realities of adulthood. We grant 18-year-olds the power to make life-altering decisions, from choosing their leaders to defending their nation. To deny them the right to decide whether to consume an alcoholic beverage in a regulated setting is a profound contradiction. The current prohibition for this age group hasn't eradicated underage drinking. It has merely pushed it into less safe, unsupervised environments, fostering a culture of clandestine binging rather than responsible moderation. By aligning the drinking age with the age of majority, we can shift the focus from ineffective prohibition to effective education. We can teach young adults about responsible alcohol consumption, the importance of moderation, and the potential dangers of misuse, treating them as capable individuals who can make informed choices. Many other mature democracies trust their 18-year-olds with this right, and their experiences show that it can be managed effectively with proper regulation and education. It's time we adopted a policy that empowers our young adults, rather than one that infantilizes them and inadvertently encourages risky behavior.
To summarize my position, the argument against lowering the legal drinking age to 18 is fundamentally rooted in a commitment to public health and safety, supported by robust scientific evidence. The period between 18 and 21 is a critical window for brain development, and early exposure to alcohol can inflict lasting damage, increasing the risk of future health problems, including addiction. Lowering the age would almost certainly lead to an increase in alcohol-related harms. More traffic accidents involving young, inexperienced drivers who have been drinking, more emergency room visits due to alcohol poisoning, and potentially more instances of alcohol-related violence and injury. The societal cost associated with these harms, in terms of healthcare, law enforcement, and lost productivity, are substantial. While arguments about legal consistency have an emotional appeal, they must be weighed against these tangible, preventable negative outcomes. Therefore, I advocate for a precautionary approach. Maintaining the current legal drinking age is not about distrusting young adults, but about protecting them and the wider community during a period of heightened vulnerability. It's a policy that prioritizes the well-being of our youth and the overall health of society.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Dr. Carter, for a comprehensive and spirited debate on this important issue. We've heard compelling arguments from both sides tonight. Sarah has emphasized the principles of legal consistency for 18-year-olds as adults and the potential for fostering responsible drinking through education rather than prohibition. Dr. Carter has underscored the significant public health and safety concerns, particularly regarding brain development and the risks of increased alcohol-related harms if the age were lowered. It's clear that this issue involves a complex balance between individual adult rights and the collective responsibility for public health. We hope this discussion has provided our viewers with valuable perspectives to consider. Thank you for joining us on Crossfire Perspectives. Good evening.